KHOP88 is on the air. It's Tuesday night. This is like the only thing I've done, like, I think I've only missed 1 week. This is the only thing I've done this many Tuesday nights in a row in a long time. So, Marnie, how are you out in California?
I'm great. The air is clear and it's 94 degrees, which is a nice day in Northern California, but I am so excited for this night. We've been waiting for this very special night to have.
Yes, joining us from the Situation Room in his house in Minnetonka. Is Mike LeSage. Mike, thanks for joining us tonight. It's great to have you with us.
Happy to be here, and again, I appreciate you two both taking the lead and pulling this together, because thinking of COVID and everyone looking for things to do, and there's nothing better than kind of in some of these cases reconnecting with people that you cared a lot at one point in time and still certainly care for today, but it's for many different reasons people are separated and stuff. So it's been fun. I haven't seen all the videos, and I will go back and watch all the clips, but each one I just started bursting out laughing at some point during it, because it stirred up other memories that I had from high school, and it was such a special time. I think people that our class, there's a reason that people try to do the best they can to make it back to the reunions and stuff, because I think it was a class that really kind of connected. So, and I will mention it too. I watched one on Ramon, which I thought was funny, because he told me at the time, right, when we were seniors, he goes, "This class is special, Mike." And I said, "Ramon, I know we're special, but no, Mike, this class is special. I like the class of '84 a lot, but this class is special." And then, like 5 years later, wherever I ran into him, he said, that's my favorite class of all time. And so I know when you guys were asking different questions and stuff, he didn't come clean. And he actually called me a couple of weeks ago. I didn't talk to him for a while. We were talking. I said, "Ramon, you didn't give the proper shout out." He goes, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "We were your favorite class." He goes, "Mike, he said he did some move and he took all the yearbooks he had. He had all the yearbooks, and he forgot. He said, he'd been there for I don't know how long he was at Hopkins, that called 30 years, but he forgot kind of what class is what class. Some of it kind of melts together, which makes a lot of sense. But he was, here's the doctor.
There I am.
The doctor is in.
Sorry, I forgot about school conferences for one of my kids. So one of those things.
Nah, just blow it off.
You're making the dramatic entry. I knew you planned it this way.
That is probably correct.
Right?
I wanted to drum roll, but we're not giving it to you.
Well, so we were just talking about how great our class was. And, the funny thing about this comment from Ramon is that my mom worked in the school at Gatewood, and she said the same thing about our group. And that's not just choosing favorites, because my sister was 2 years behind us. She was like, "Oh yeah, you guys were way better than they were." But I think there's something to that, and I don't exactly know what it is, other than there were a lot of nice kids. And the thing about our group here is, I think all four of us were joiners. Not to say that there's anything wrong with not being a joiner, but we all wanted to be doing stuff all the time.
Oh, you mean by joiner, you mean by being a part of things rather than
active.
Doing nothing. Gotcha.
Being on teams, trying to do that, trying out for plays, being in the band, being on student council, whatever. So maybe you guys could answer that at first. Do you remember conscientiously saying that, like, "Oh, in high school, I want to be a part of a lot of things," or were you just looking for fun and friends and things to do?
I think the latter, really. I mean, I don't remember ever thinking like, yes, we need to. It wasn't an issue of resume padding or anything like that. It was just doing stuff that you thought was enjoyable.
I still remember, Jason, kind of went back, actually the three of us went to West, and I remember, and it's funny, my kids laugh at me when I say this, but I wasn't, I was kind of quiet, or, just kind of find your way, through things.
I'm laughing at you now.
In seventh grade, I go, "I'm going to run for student government. Why not?" Right. And so I remember running or whatever and got elected. And it was kind of the start, like, "Oh, I can do this." And it was kind of cool activity to meet other people. And And so that just kind of started things saying, well, I should participate, because again, you just met people from different walks of life, different backgrounds. And I think that was, if I look back at what, at Hopkins, there are so many different ways to participate, right? I mean, be it sports, be it theater, be it music, be it knowledge master, quiz bowl, debate, speech, whatever it was. And so, and then shop, I mean, they had all sorts of different classes and stuff that people could test out. And it was all cool. People all, it seemed like a lot of people just kind of, tried different things. So yeah, so I to me, it was fantastic, because through that process, you were able to meet a lot of people and develop good friendships.
Yeah, it's interesting. I look at my kids, and they're oftentimes with a lot of the different things, there seems to be a secondary goal. I mean, sports has changed to the point that people are worried about college stuff all the time, or things that they do like, oh, well, you got to put this on your college resume to make this kind of look. And I thought, when did this change happen? I guess during the time between when we were young and now it happened, where there's just a lot more pressure on things.
Well, Matt, you went to a college that was difficult to get into, MIT. Mike and so did you, Marnie. You started at Northwestern, right, Marnie?
I froze.
And Marnie's frozen. We'll have to bring her back.
You're just fine.
Mike and I went to big schools that were, I don't want to say it was easy to get into Madison, but it was not as hard as it is for Mike's son's going here now. It was not nearly as difficult as it is now. So the competition there, you have to have extracurriculars and everything to staff.
Well, there's probably so many more people. I mean, you're involved in the school. Are there a lot more kids applying? Are there just that many more applications?
Yeah, and they're of higher caliber. And I don't know, maybe that's just because everybody's getting better at it. But it's difficult, right? I mean, tell me about your son getting into school here, Mike. Was it a slog a little bit?
Well, so it's interesting. I kind of, you think you compare your son to, well, you always, so we have 4 children, and each kid is different, of course. And so for
Rank
Benjamin.
them for us.
What's that?
Rank them for us. No, I'm just kidding.
Love them all. But for Benjamin, school goes, it's fairly easy, for him. And math, it kind of reminds me of Mike Case a little bit, like math for him. He was at the highest doing multivariable calc, in high school, and he didn't really have to study a lot. And so for me, it was like, and I didn't know, of course, being a Gopher, and I was kind of hoping a little bit that he would end up as a Gopher. But then we visited the campus of Madison, and I told Jason, Marnie, we talked about this a bit, but I didn't realize how beautiful a campus Madison, is. And so that was part of it. And it's a very difficult school to get into, as you said. But he just fell in love with the campus, and he's in the business program there. And so that process for him, and he loves sports, so Camp Randall and, basketball, he's not going to play any sports at college, but he was quite active in high school. And again, so he's there. Fortunately, he's on the Lakeshore side, so they've kind of escaped any of the COVID lockdowns and having a great time.
Well, Matt, why did you leave Minnesota, and why did you come back?
I don't mind saying I never really thought about going anywhere else. It's that my brother was at MIT, and I just assumed I would go there as well, because I was good in science and math, and it seemed like the place to go. So I kind of followed in his footsteps in a weird way. Well, not in a weird way, in a direct way, I guess.
Yeah. And did you just always know you were going to come back?
No, because I went to medical school after college, and I had no plans on going to medical school when I went to college. It's just something I sort of stumbled across. I was ROTC in the Navy, and they didn't initially allow people to go to medical school. You had to go in the real Navy. And then that happened maybe sophomore or junior year, that they opened up maybe 12 kids a year or something. And I said, sure, I guess I don't know why. It just seemed like a good idea. So I applied, and similar to Madison, Jason, what you're talking about, medical schools are difficult to get into if you're not from the state where the school is. They really, you know, a lot of 90% admissions are from that state because they want people to stay there. So I wound up at the University of Minnesota, but then I left again afterwards and lived in San Diego for 4 or 5 years. And I was a doctor with the Navy. So I've lived on both coasts, Boston and San Diego, and then just wound up back here because that's where my parents are. And it seemed like a good place to raise kids.
Did you
It's
ever
interesting.
serve abroad?
No, and that is one of my big regrets. I was nervous about it at first, but then everybody I met that had lived in Guam or Japan or something just had these fantastic stories. And I thought, man, that would be great. I ended up serving abroad. I was in the war in 2003. I was over in Kuwait, but I didn't really get to see anything. I was just in tents. I didn't get to
Mike,
live
you lived in, I want to say Singapore, right?
In Singapore.
Tell us about that. How was that experience and what brought you over there?
That was awesome. So I had just finished getting my MBA at the U. So I went to the Carlson School. We had a program that you'd go every Friday and Saturday, a 2-year program. And so I was just finishing up there and got approached with an opportunity within Cargill to go and start up the risk management business in Asia and Singapore. And I still remember the discussion with my wife. We were driving to go see a Vikings Bears game. So we were heading to Soldiers Field. I said, Cindy, there's an opportunity at Cargill here that I think looks pretty interesting. And, you know, it's in Singapore. And she's like, huh, Singapore. Okay, that's at the equator. That's actually, yeah, that sounds good. And I thought I was going to have to do a significant sales job. And so
was
that
this
was
a
interesting.
December Vikings game? It was 28 below, and
yeah, it was cold. But the interesting thing, so we just had our second child, and so Jonathan was 10 weeks old, you know, when we headed there, and Courtney was 18 months old. And so we went with 2 babies, which as we all know, going on an international flight, you know, so it goes Narita down. So it's 12 hours and another 7 hours down. So that was quite an experience. And then we had our third child. So Benjamin, who's at Madison, you know, was born in Singapore. So we were there from 2000 to 2004. A great experience, you know, but it was interesting. I talked to a guy, chairman of this company in Singapore last night. And I told him I was laughing, and he was asked me about my experience there. And I said, it's like Groundhog's Day, right? Because every day is like 85 degrees, give or take a few degrees, and 85% humidity. So, I mean, but the food, fantastic. The people, amazing. And you could cheaply travel to anywhere, you know, in Southeast Asia. You know, it's a little different than the US where you don't, you know, when you go to the airport, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg if you're buying a spot flight. But there you could walk up and say, yeah, like, you know, our family wants to go to Phuket, Thailand this weekend, and it's $150 a ticket. You know, and you're staying at a 5-star hotel at the time, you know, it was $150 a night. And you're like, I mean, it was amazing. So I always joke with Hockett and some of the other guys. We have a golf group that we get together, you know, here and there, and I always joke that, you know, for our 50th, we joke that we should go to Phuket, Thailand, and who's in, and, you know, people, a lot of people say they're in, and I'm like, trust me, guys, we can. I know the location, I know people, we can get it set up, but we got about half the groups.
How months in effect?
Yeah,
have somebody like book and go, wait, it's that weekend. I guess I can't go.
Exactly. So, but anyways, yeah, it was a great experience for the family. We had some help there. And so, and she kind of she was our nanny and kind of became part of the family after 4 years. And she really assisted with Cindy, you know, with having 3 very young kids at that time. It was nice to have an extra set of hands when you don't have any family and, you know, around there. So it was a great experience.
You think I would know this, but did you deliver your third kid there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
How was the hospital experience in Singapore? Fine.
Amazing. You know, the thing is, you go into the hospital and they list out all the things. So epidural, 550 Sing, Advil, everything is listed, the full comprehensive list of things, and you can choose what you want or what you don't want, and you pay. So you give a credit card and you pay for it. And if there's adjustments, they'll adjust it, but very different from here, certainly. But the care was exceptional. And yeah, Mount Elizabeth was where Benjamin's born. So unfortunately, he will not be able to be a senator or the president, unless we get some rules changed
Wow.
in Congress.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So,
this is I'm sorry, but this is the strangest topic ever.
I
the
love it.
billing of deliveries in Singapore, but we can move on.
No, that's okay.
The Peanut Gallery has some comments. Chad Alt says, thank you very much for your service and sacrifice. Matt, sorry, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm joking. Doug Robertson says, it's great to see you guys. Patty Hegry says, something mysterious.
Oh.
Thank goodness for Mr. Zophie and Business Map. Go Gophers. What does this mean?
Must be a university thing.
Zophie?
Zophie, Z-O-F-I.
I don't recognize that name from
Wait, no,
Hopkins High School.
Zophie. Isn't that like some sort of real estate thing or something? Is he advertised? Patty,
I'm just glad Doug, I heard the question Doug asked about, the Gurkey. And so I'm waiting for Doug to throw a different question out there. So I'm prepared, like a good Eagle Scout prepared.
Poker guys in the room.
We're going to go back in time with you guys. So what are your first memories of each other?
Oh.
So it would have been West Junior High.
Yeah. So I was supposed to meet Mike in 6th grade when they redistrict where I lived in Glen Lake, and I was supposed to go to Catherine Curran, but then I decided I didn't want to go, and I had to walk like 3/4 of a mile to get to the bus stop just to stay at Glen Lake, or I would have known Mike a year earlier. So it would have been 7th grade, maybe football, I guess.
Football and basketball. I don't, but yeah, football probably was football.
Yeah, probably football. In the
Let's talk for a second about 7th grade football, because we haven't discussed junior high football yet.
Oh, yeah.
At West Junior High School, 7th grade and 8th grade, they split the football teams up into lightweight and heavyweight.
Yes.
And do you remember what the pound cutoff was for lightweight?
100.
It was 150.
That was 100.
No, it's 100.
100?
I was 103, so I had a chance to go either way, but I didn't want to be a lineman. I did heavyweight and played quarterback. And
Yeah.
I've thought about this because my son is in 8th grade playing football. And when he was in 7th grade, he already weighed 147 pounds. And the offensive linemen that he plays against now in 8th grade are pushing 200.
Yeah.
And 8th graders.
You guys both played heavyweights. I played lightweights. And the best part about football was like 2 of the best teachers at West were the coaches. But the other thing that I can't imagine is that each team was coached by one guy. That was it. Yeah. Mr. Chose coached the lightweights. Bangerter coached the heavyweights. Those guys just ran practice as one guy. Yeah. That is impossible to imagine now. And we had so much fun, I remember. Because Chose would pit us against the heavyweights, and he used to call you guys the fat boys. And we had a really good season.
He was 35 years too much ahead of his time to call me a fat boy. That's right.
Jason, don't you remember though? Wasn't Byron Jensen also a coach?
Later, I believe.
Because I just remember one time, and I don't know what happened, what breakdown there was, but it was super hot. And he was upset because something happened or someone was goofing around. And we got down and we were going down to sit down and we're taking off our helmets. And he yelled, "You're not taking off your helmets. Put them on and face the sun." And I'm like, okay. So everyone's like, put their helmets back on. And we were just dying. It was super hot. But I just remember he had his fill. So it was, but no, those are lightweight. Yeah, I remember you were a lightweight and I was a heavyweight.
I forgot. They just called us lightweights, and that would never happen today. They would call it like blue and gold or something, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, now they generally do it. They weigh the kids ahead of time, and if you're too big, you can't be a running back. So you have to have like a. They put
a star on your helmet,
something like that indicates you're big dude.
It sucks because all the best I coached my son's football team when he was around that age. And you get these guys who are really good athletes, but they just weigh too much, and they come off the scale and they're like, "Put the star on my helmet. I guess I'm going to play guard again." Like, sorry about that,
It happens.
But yeah, that was funny. Those those teams that we played on at West, whether it was football or basketball, or you were a wrestler, Mike.
That was accidental.
It
Oh, I
was.
want to hear this then. How did this happen?
So I was the last person cut on the basketball team. So, so I was like, and obviously Mike Case and Gary Thompson were close friends, of course. And they said, well, come out for wrestling. And so I did. And it was actually a bizarre experience. So I went to one practice and then there's a meet. And there, I remember it was a dual meet against Minnetonka and Edina. And the varsity wrestler that was slated to wrestle was sick or whatever. So they put me in varsity to wrestle this guy in Minnetonka. Again, I had 1 day practice. And I just remember I just went and tackled the guy. I just bull rushed him, tackled him and squeezed him as hard as I can. You know, and I pinned him. But I thought, this is how dumb I was. I thought you had to have the 3 slaps like all-star wrestling. Yeah. So I pin him, the guy slaps the mat, and I'm still squeezing the guy as hard as I can. The guy's like, you can let him up now. And I'm like, you know, so yeah, so I kind of, I really enjoyed, you know, so then the rest, and I remember that there was an individual on the basketball team that got kicked off the team. His name will be named. And then they asked me to come back. And at that time, I'm like, no, you know, because frankly, I was the only skill I had in basketball. I was a good rebounder and I was physical, but I had 0 shot. And I look at my kids today. So Benjamin, you know, and Mitchell are both basketball players, and they've got phenomenal 3-point shots. I mean, they're shooting guards. And I don't know, I guess my wife probably had some serious basketball skill or something, because I was, and Matt can attest to it, I was not, there was not a lot of finesse in my game. But so yeah,
they start a lot younger, and there's just a lot more of whatever. So yeah, they start younger and they start airing up the 3-pointers, and yeah, pretty amazing.
All right, we've got a couple of other people weighing in here. Troy Finn is recalling North Junior High School light and heavyweights as well. What are you going to say, Marnie?
Oh, by the way, I'm not going to be looking at Facebook tonight because I'm having some internet bandwidth issues. So you're on the Facebook comments.
I'm on it.
Okay.
Stacy Semler weighs in, and so she brings up a question that I was thinking about as well. She says, Mike, were you in cross country in high school, or did you start long distance running later in life?
That's right.
You're like a marathon guy now.
Well, so that's another interesting story. And I think you probably all were there, but I believe, but remember when I broke my wrist go-karting?
Yeah.
So I was racing Bob Gollin, and then the steering wheel just gave way. It just, you know, and I just went flying into the tires and broke my wrist. So I couldn't play football, and I had a cast on, of course. And so then I went up for cross country. So that was when I did track every year, but I'd never, you know, I wasn't a longer distance. I mean, I did 800 in track. And so I really actually love cross country because, you know, again, the camaraderie, and then you'd all just run together, right? So you'd have the race and everyone moves together. It's not like a track meet where you have to sit there for 2.5 hours and you're waiting for when you're going to run, and you're waiting to see other people. You're cheering on your teammates, but there's a lot of downtime. But yeah, that's so I've done a few marathons, and, you know, again, for me, I enjoy running just for the release. I get the runner's high, and I just enjoy kind of getting out there and running, and just enjoy it. So been fortunate enough to still be able to do that. Not fast, but you know, keep moving.
Fast.
So Matt, you golf. What other sports do you do now in the 21st century?
Well, I don't golf as much anymore just because of kids' schedule and things like that. I started doing some triathlon training a couple of years ago, and I've done a couple of those, and was going to do more this year, but then COVID kind of canceled things. And my girlfriend, actually, Jason, was going to do she'll do it next year, the Madison Ironman. So yeah. we went out a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, and rode part of the bike course, and it was very interesting. And I was going to ask you about, man, everything's boarded up in Madison. That was strange.
We had quite a bit of, depending on which week you were there this summer, we had a number of Black Lives Matter protests in the city. There's a pretty rich history, as you may know, of protests in Madison. and we had our own instance of a police officer shooting and killing a young Black man who was unarmed a few years ago. So that's pretty raw still. And so that's why those
the whole first floor of the
to
state
come
capitol.
off now. But
Yeah.
what's that?
I said the whole first floor of the state capitol, because we stayed right on that kind of that square. So
Yeah. But yeah, that Ironman is a big deal. I mean, it's a legit big time Ironman, and people race it to qualify to go to Hawaii.
Kona, yeah.
And I used to work right downtown, and our joke during Ironman week is like every day you get more and more people coming in, and these Ironman triathletes just they treat the world like their locker room. So it's just not uncommon at all to just be
They shower
walking along. Yeah, you got guys just in various
Taking
states of
clothes off.
undress right behind their car, and yeah, like they're just comfortable. You know, understandably, they have 0% body fat. You know, they look pretty good, but yeah,
No, I don't
it's
do
pretty
that.
amusing. It's like, take your changing and go over there with it.
I'll do
trying
the
to go to lunch here.
short distance one. So Mike will
Okay.
do the longer one. So
Yeah.
You bring up the pandemic. I always, one of the things that inspired us to start the show is in part the context we're in the pandemic. So is there anything that do you have any new pandemic hobbies or things you've done that you want to share with us?
Well, one thing, again, so since mid-March, I've been working from home, and in our company, we're not going to be going back, for sure not until January. And so every day I try to take a call. If I know there's not something I need to look at a spreadsheet or data from the computer, I'll take the call and I'll walk. And it's kind of a 4 mile loop that I'll take, which has been nice. I found that kind of relaxing. So that's one thing. And then I found too the evil of Netflix, of getting on a series and just kind of binge watching. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, it's 1 a.m. in the morning. Last night it was 12:30. I'm like, okay, I've got an early morning. I've got to turn this off and move on. But
what were you watching last night?
So, it's American Spy's turn. It's it's actually quite good. I'm probably in season 3. But I remember I broke my collarbone biking in a kind of a time trial. And I remember doing West Wing. It was like I'd never seen it and stuff. And it was one of those ones. And at the time they couldn't do surgery. So it happened on a Sunday and they couldn't do the surgery to Wednesday. And so they gave me some pretty heavy drugs. And I remember I couldn't sleep. I had to sit in a chair. So I'd be watching from whenever to 4 a.m. in the morning. And Cindy would come down and be like, what are you still doing up? And I'm like, I'm not tired, And so anyways, that binge watching, because there's no, it's just goes on to the next episode, and they have a way of luring you in. So I try to catch myself watching a little bit too much at times, and then need to pivot.
It's okay. How about you, Matt? Fess up.
No, I don't know if I haven't really developed any habits. We've had to work from home a lot, which is completely different for doctoring at all.
Yes.
So this week I'm working from home the whole time. So it is either phone calls or video visits, like we're doing now. And it's actually more exhausting than being in the office. So I think a lot of patients, there's not been a lot of interpersonal contact. So this is really a chance to talk, and they talk and they talk and they talk. And it just goes on and on sometimes.
So Matt, you're a family practice doctor.
Yes, family practice. Yeah.
Tell us about maybe how you decided to go into that area of medicine and what you like about your job.
During the last couple of years of medical school, you try rotations in a bunch of different areas. And I did a pediatrics rotation early on, and I really liked working with kids. But then I did a rotation where I was working with older folks, and I liked working with older folks. And then I did a couple of surgical rotations, and I liked doing procedures. And that's kind of family practice is the specialty that allows you to see all ages, and you can really be as hands-on as you want. Not every primary care doctor does a lot of procedures, but I do tons of injections and minor surgeries and a lot of vasectomies, it turns out. That's kind of a sort of a specialty of mine, that I do a lot of that. And so it kind of gives just a variety of a little bit of everything. So keeps the day interesting.
And you're seeing patients now. What percentage of your time is spent seeing patients in person versus on teleconference screen?
Most of the year we were only in the office 1 week out of every 4.
Okay.
And now we're 2 weeks in and 1 week out. So about 2/3 of the time seeing active patients. Although it's a little bit less than that because I work for Fairview Health, which is a big group in the Twin Cities. And before the pandemic hit, we were already in the process of revamping how medicine is delivered because people have wanted easier access, virtual care long before any COVID came about. And that just accelerated the process. I think before everybody was ready for it, but it sort of moved it along. So I think going forward, we're still going to have a lot of time from home or at least virtual care because that's what people need.
I have a follow-up question. So what are the ethics of seeing people we went to school with? Is it different? Like when someone's like, oh, I went to school with you. Will you be my doctor? How do you deal with that?
No, there's nothing unethical about it at all.
Okay.
I do talk to folks if they're friends and they come to see me, I say, just so you know, I need to treat you as if you're a patient, not a friend, just ahead of time. And as long as there's that expectation, then it's perfectly fine. Obviously, I don't disclose any of that, but I have had some folks from our school that see me that will post on Facebook or various things like that. So I guess there are some open secrets in the world.
Yes. Interesting.
Mike, LeSage, are you going to see Hockett for your vasectomy?
I've
Don't
heard
need to
one.
answer that.
No.
The first 3 failed. It's his 4th one coming up.
I have, and it's really the proximity. I would have Matt be my doctor, and I do discuss things with him, but it's just he's in Maple Grove and I'm in Hockett. It's not the easiest, but I think as I age, there'll be a time I'll pivot. You know, as time frees up and stuff, I'd certainly go to Matt. Appreciate his advice, his direct candor, and obviously he knows the world of medicine well.
You know, I saw that like at the beginning of I'm sure it was at the beginning of the whole coronavirus thing, and Matt got on Facebook and was like, "Hey, look, this is how this works," you know, and you were advising people to shut down the sleepovers and stuff. I remember that level of candor and directness. That was kind of cool to see.
Well, that was selfishly because my high school age daughter was freaking out that everybody else got together and she couldn't.
That's fantastic. Teenagers, right?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So Chuck Giastra's in, and he says, Mike, do you dye your hair? I swear it was gray when I saw you at the Gopher game last year.
What?
I've got some gray here,
I know.
on the sides, but no, I've never dyed my hair. Not like Matt. I don't dye my hair like Matt.
Right.
But no, but Chuck, yeah, I saw Chuck. It was great to see him. I hadn't seen Chuck for a long time, and that's another.
Charlie's got a good head of hair.
Yeah,
but that's another great thing. It's funny when you run into people you hadn't seen for a while. It's like you reconnect like you're back in high school, right? I mean, that's one of the great things. And so we had a good laugh, and unfortunately I won't see him at Gophers games, unless something changes this year. But yeah, it was good to see Chuck.
Now I was going to ask you about your son being at Wisconsin. Perhaps like your son, when I was growing up, my dad took me to Gopher. He always had tickets, so we always went to football, basketball, and hockey games throughout my youth, all the way through high school. And of course, I landed on the UW campus and became a Badger fan in about 5 minutes. Do you have similar concerns about Benjamin? Does it matter to you? Was there a little bit of when he decided to go away, or are you cool with it?
Well, it's funny. So I've had season tickets for Gophers hockey and Gophers football since I've been back from Singapore. And so in taking them and taking their friends, and actually, oddly enough, I posted something tonight. So he and one of his good friends and his good friend's girlfriend, there's a picture of 5 of them, and all of them had the Gophers gear on, and 3 of the 5 are at Madison, and the 2 are at different spots right now. But so I'm like, what happened? And so, yeah, jokingly, when Benjamin decided, to go to Madison, he told Cindy, and he said, you probably should just tell Dad. And she's like, you go tell your dad. He's like, no, I'm not telling Dad. So, you know, we jokingly, because I'm obviously a big Gophers fan.
Well, yeah, but Cindy's also a U of M alum, so that's.
She's a U of M alum, but she's not the same. You know, she'll go to a Gophers game here and there with me, but you know, I tailgate and get into it. But no, proud of them and understand. You know, after I visited the campus, and as we talked about before, these schools, you know, the public schools, part of it is that price spread. You know, why is Madison so much more difficult than when we went there? You know, I think it's, when you look at it now for to go into the U and with housing and food and all that stuff, it's $25,000 a year. And the other schools, if it's Brown or something, it's 65 or 70,000, or Northwestern or MIT or whatever. So that price spread, you know, and when we graduated, you could make a multiple, you know, of what what you paid, you know, for the last year tuition. Now these kids are lucky, right? If they get out and they're making what they paid for tuition, you know, the year before. I mean, you can do it. It's just a calculus game there, but it's but that's, you know, it's a whole different thing. But there's just the price of college is just it's so expensive for these kids. It's really a head scratcher. But anyways, yeah, I've gotten over it. I accept it. I told him, I said, for one thing, do not think you'll ever see me in a Badgers, you know, sweatshirt. So I said,
Badger dad hat. There you go.
Not happening. Not
Badger
happening.
dad.
I took my very short story. I just want to say, I took my dad once to the Badgers were playing the Gophers at the Metrodome, and I got tickets in the, you know, Badger section. And my dad's like, this is ridiculous. And I said, well, whatever. And he came with me, and we were sitting right on the aisle, and he's wearing his M hat. And Bucky Badger comes marching up the aisle, takes my dad's Gopher hat off his head, and just frisbees it into the crowd and just keeps going. Like,
that's illegal.
Yeah, I'm like, you're in your own home stadium. You got nowhere to hide.
Yeah,
that's right.
Go ahead, Marnie. Otherwise, I have an embarrassing story here from one of our viewers.
Hold on, Marnie.
Oh, no, I like embarrassing stories. I'm learning to zip it.
Heather Thorson joins us. She goes all the way back to 9th grade. I don't know if I knew this, but she says, I'll try to stitch this together. She says, hello, love to you guys, jumping in at the end. Mike, sorry I left you at the 9th grade formal with Jenny Gassman to go to my first Rocky Horror Picture Show. My mom berates me to this day. So does this mean what I think it is, that Thorson ditched you at the formal?
She did.
Her mom has a crush on Mike?
Unfortunately, I have my Kleenex box here, so I may need to wipe a few tears. No, yeah, it's funny. She, you know, she told me after her mom, you know, gave her a lot of grief. We obviously had a great time at, you know, at the dance or whatever like that. So it was like, you know, no big deal, but love that story. But it happened. Yep, she left me, which that was my tack with women. You know, I could maybe get them there, but then they just bailed on me. So it's, you know, it's
right,
par for the course, right, Hawks?
Exactly.
And who did you go to the 9th grade dance with, Matt?
Jenny Chard. I don't know if she's on here or not. So, yeah.
Interesting. Well, it's so funny when you all talk about sports, because I had no knowledge or interest in all of your sporting activities when you weren't hanging out with me. So one of the things I wanted to bring out, which I care a lot about, is that Mike has been elected to a school board. And are you still an elected official, Mike?
I am. So I go through
for 3 more weeks. Whoa, just kidding.
Not this January, a year later. So I'm kind of, you know, 2/3, I guess, through the term.
Your second term?
No, first term.
On which school board, please, for the
So it's Minnetonka School Board. So it's interesting because Minnetonka, when we were at Hopkins was the school of excellence, right? It was, you know, if there's Edina people on, they'd probably say they were equivalent of Hopkins, but we were, you know,
whatever,
probably the best school in the state at the time. And I remember your brother winning the National Merit Scholar and Ronald Reagan.
They had 4 presidential scholars in a row. from Hopkins. So like
So,
my
I mean-
brother and Dave Rossborough, and I don't remember the other two, but yeah.
But when President Reagan came to give him that award, I remember just being packed, you know, in whatever gym it was. I was way up in the
Eisenhower.
rafters.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
so Minnetonka is kind of a similar what Hopkins was at the time. You know, it's you know, niche.com ranks at the top district in the state. And so, you know, it's it's an honor to serve, but I will tell you it's certainly a lot more work than I anticipated, and particularly with COVID
I can imagine.
and George Floyd, and you know, because people, my whole thing is this is not a political, there's not one party versus another thing. It's all about the kids, and how do we make sure that kids are excelling at and giving them the opportunities like we were all afforded opportunities to excel in whatever their passion is, right? That's all I care about. And man, the comments that people will say or you know, and I'm like, whoa. You know, and unfortunately, people, I think they don't think of the greater good. They think of my little Johnny or my little Sally, and you know, this is this, and it's like, okay, you know, if there's an issue with them, let's sort through that. But think of all the kids, and so yeah, it's we won't belabor that point, but yes, Marnie, and I know you know, served as a school board member too, so thank you for that service, because it's at times you scratch your head and go, why did I decide this was a
Well,
good idea?
I would tell you, I thought about you a lot and some of the other, like Jason, other people we served with on the student council, because sometimes I thought, well, gee, high school student council could deal with some of these problems better than the adults. I mean, just as far as like thinking about students, youth voices, what youth need. So I thought about you occasionally, Mike, as my running mate. Like when I was on the dais, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So Matt, when I was at the reunion, my first reunion a couple years ago, I remember talking to you and you're like, maybe someday I'll run for office.
Oh, did I say that?
Yes.
What was I drinking that night? Holy.
A lot.
Ah, yes.
You don't
No,
remember.
I don't know if I have that in me. So,
Okay.
Never say
So
never,
are
doctor.
you
well,
Are
I'll
you gonna
never
run?
say never, but I don't mind admitting this is sort of a little insider doctor stuff. There's not much that makes you dislike people more than being a doctor. Sorry, but I know that's a hard thing to say, but wow, the stuff that you hear from folks. And 2020 has been, this is textbook of, man, people are selfish and whatever.
Yeah,
There's a
it's
lot
not
more behind
it's
that.
not the best
Proud people
year.
don't care about anyone but themselves and what they think. This is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, it's not the best year for humanity, I don't think. And you know, it is funny because some of these, you know, all these existential, you know, things, you know, we've talked about it here on this podcast. I just was had a thing for work the other day where some reporters and I were taking questions from readers, and they were like, what's the worst part about the pandemic for you? And I said, I mean, honestly, almost every reason I got into my line of work is not available to me right now. I like to talk to people. I like to approach strangers and just chat with them. I like being in the newsroom day in, day out with that level of chaos and fun. And none of that is around. So you start thinking like, geez, did I do the right thing? Hey, I'm 50. There's time for a third act. So that was the point that I was going to get to. Mike, you're no longer at Cargill anymore. I don't know how much your job differs from the way it used to be. Matt, you're obviously, you know, when you're a doctor, you're sort of married to that profession. But do you guys ever think about this like third act that people start talking about? You think about just throwing it all away and trying something new?
Yeah, so that's kind of it's adjacency, but you know, so the Proterra where I work now, it's a Cargill spinout, and so I left Cargill to start up a fund there. It's a sustainable agriculture fund, and I won't bore everyone with the details, but it's basically when you think of cage-free egg production. So we've got an investment in California in Central Valley Eggs. It's the largest cage-free, you know, egg producing facility in the U.S. And so it's all around sustainability, but it was a demand pull coming from customers that we were serving in risk management. So McDonald's and Walmart's and these type customers, you know, talked about the need and talked about how they're going to make this commitment to more humane practices for animals. And so that's why I left to set up that fund, to start that fund. So, but it's quite different, you know, when you're leading a team of 240 people to leading a team. Now we've got 4, you know, within my group. So quite a different dimension, but it was part of it, you know, and I looked and saw, it was actually interesting. I don't remember there's a kid from the Hopkins Royals newspaper that interviewed me when I was at Cargo Risk Management, running risk management, and he was asking me these questions. And he said, how many meetings do you have a day? What was that, Hawks?
A current high school student interviewed?
Well, this would have been 4 or 5 years ago. So he was, current student. Reached out and I said, yeah, you know, as a current student, wanted to highlight an alumnus or whatever like that. I don't know why he picked me, but he just, so anyway, I said, find out, you know, but anyways, he asked the question, he said, how many meetings do you have a day? I go, good question. So I just opened my calendar. I averaged 12 meetings a day. You know, so it was just this grind. I was just in this absolute like grind, and you know, it was, and so yeah, I was ready for that next act, and I'm loving what I'm doing. I love my team, and so still miss a lot. You know, there's great company, great people, and I still have opportunities to work with a lot of them in different projects and stuff. But yeah, so that second, so Jason, you're obviously exceptional at interviewing people, and obviously you've always been bright, so you could do many different things, and you know, so whatever that is, follow that passion.
Newspaper, a podcast, radio show.
It's
Seriously,
the book. It's the book. Okay, how about you, Matt? And then we have to ask the obligatory Prince question.
Yeah, right.
But Matt, your third act.
The hard part is my skills don't really translate into much of anything else specifically. So, you know, I have an interest in like bigger health outcomes and things. I don't know how to translate from what I do into any of that sort of stuff. And so I'm not sure. I guess if anything, the
TV talk show.
I'd like to retire at some point, but I got kids to put through college and that type of thing first.
So your daughter, maybe people know this, maybe they don't. Matt's got a hotshot softball player for a daughter. Is she in the college discussion at this point? Or is she looking around? And
so she has a commitment to St. Thomas. So they moved. Yeah, it was interesting because they moved to D1 starting next year in 2021. So the Division 1 and 2 schools couldn't really recruit much this summer. So it gave this huge advantage to St. Thomas, who knew they were going to be Division 1, but they still got to recruit as a Division 3 and show up. So my daughter is signed there, and then some other girls and things like that. So it's kind of fun. We weren't sure exactly the way it was going to go, but now I guess I get to fund St. Thomas somehow.
That's cool though. She'll be close. You'll be able to still see your games all the time.
That's good. Yeah.
And softball games, you got to wait those out sometimes. There's rain and you got to just sit.
I'm well aware of all the different exactly weather patterns that can. We're in lovely Sioux Falls last weekend, and we get to go to Quad Cities next weekend for a nice tournament. Yeah. It never ends.
Okay, Prince run-ins, any of you? Did you play with Prince, Mike?
So I have never had a personal run-in, but a mid-school classmate of mine did back when Suburban Wildlife existed. I don't know if most of you guys remember Suburban Wildlife.
Never been there, but I'm familiar with it.
The bathroom wasn't in the bar itself. It was kind of in a hallway part of the building. And I had a friend that went to go to the bathroom, and there was just 2 huge dudes like standing outside the bathroom. And he went to walk in, and they just stuck out their arm like, can't go in. And he's like, what? And they're like, can't go in. And he's like, well, why? And like 10 seconds later, all of a sudden, a rather diminutive man came walking out, and he's like, oh, that's Prince. And then they all walked away.
That's a good brush with Prince. Any brushes with Prince, Mike?
No, I never did. And, you know, I lived in Chanhassen for, I don't know, 6-7 years. And my sister-in-law did. She was in a car, and he had it was a Cadillac convertible, and he waved to her, and she's like, waved to him, you know, but no, I never, it bums me out too, because once in a while you'd hear, well, he's going to play at Paisley Park, and you'd hear this rumbling around, and I never, you know, I've heard that people would line up, and then he wouldn't show that night and whatever, so I never did that. So I regret it, you know, because a couple of nights he did actually play and stuff and people, but I don't have the patience to, you know, I'm like, unless I know I'm willing to pay the price to go see something, but I also never saw him in concert either, which, yeah. So, but it's funny. So I know that a couple of your sessions, you've talked about other things in music.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys remember this one, but for my high school graduation party, so it was Bob Gollin, Jesse Lehman, Pete Rich on drums, Chris Ewis playing keyboard, and Steve Murray playing bass. So they played up my backyard. And so we told all my neighbors, but you know, they just were ripping it, right? So about 20 minutes into it, the police came. And then my mom knew both the police officers, so she said, okay, I'll have them turn it down. So again, they were just ripping it. And then they, about 15 minutes later, said, if we need to come back again, we're shutting this thing down. So then unfortunately, they didn't get to play a lot, but it was fun. So it was hearing some of the, you know, you've obviously had Dave Green and Bob on, and then Jesse Lehman, Eric Croteville. So that was a fun, because we all worked at Interlochen, and I was a starter there. And I remember talking to John Rickard, the assistant pro. He said, Mike, it was like the radio was on. You know, that was 2 miles away. He said,
Rickard heard it at the club?
At the club. He was out on the deck, and he's like, it sounded like there was a radio that was going on from just inside the club. He said it was loud. So.
Well, my medicine Prince story to add to that is I know both Prince's first and last physicians. So first, not from childhood, but when they first started filming Purple Rain and things, and they needed like a doctor, you need to get insurance and that sort of thing as an actor on set. And then he became his personal physician, and I'm also friends with his last physician. So
that's interesting. Well, so do the two of you have any questions for each other? Any stories you want to share about each other?
Right. We probably aired them out 2 weeks ago up in Cross Lake.
I was just reminded when you said Interlochen that the three of us had at various times worked at Interlochen, which I still on many occasions believe was the best job ever. I still think like, yeah, maybe the best boss I ever had was Bildo at Interlochen Country Club. That guy was a good boss.
Yeah.
But a friend of mine from college, she lives on the other side of Interlochen from where you lived, Mike. So over on the Edina side.
Ooh, that's the good side.
Yes, the good side, the Edina side. Her son was a caddy at Interlochen, and I sort of, you know, interrogated this kid like 3 summers ago when I was up there. I was like, tell me how it works. What's the deal? And he was like, oh yeah, you log on to the website, you tell them you're up for it the next day. They send you an email with your loop. Like I'm like, what, you don't hang out at the caddy shack all day just hoping that like, so yeah, they completely changed it.
That was an amazing experience, because you always had a lot of money. So you could always play cards, right? Because we had all this cash. Roof ball for money. But I still remember, do you remember, Jason, when I caddied for President Ford?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
So that was
That's right.
A great honor, right, to be able to caddy him. I still remember being called up there, and they wouldn't tell me why I was getting called up to the pro shop, and there's 2 guys in suits, and they just started asking me just very personal questions. I'm like, how do you know this information? I'm like, yes. And they're like, we're going to be the ones asking the questions. I'm like, okay. And then
Nice.
Sure enough. So
I just want to know why you submitted to a strip search. That's weird.
Yeah, it seemed voluntarily, I believe.
Yeah,
I'll
body cavity. That seems strange.
Well, I still remember though that the night before we had a card party at Haugen's house. And so, you know, we were just obviously all going caddying. So I grabbed his dad's hat, right? And so it was an Evans Scholar hat, oddly enough. And I'm going, I have to get his signature. So I actually have it here.
He signed the hat.
Oh, here we go. Memorabilia.
Woo-hoo-hoo.
Oh, nice.
So cool.
I don't know if you can see. Can you see it?
Very
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
I need to put it in something a little bit. It's always just kind of been in this cabinet here. But yeah, it was a great experience. But it was funny because it wasn't obviously my hat. So, you know, years later, I had to kind of fess up to Mr. Haugen that I owned some property. He got a good kick out of it. So
I bet. That's great. Yeah, he would love that.
oh yeah.
Well, Marnie, let's tease next week's episode while we have all the people captive.
Oh, sure. I'm going to try and do it without ruining my internet. We've booked some really good shows, Jason, everyone. We're definitely on our way to year 2. So this is the 22nd episode, Jason,
I know.
of KHOP88. Next week, I confirmed Jessica Warren with a mystery guest. On October 27th, we have Mr. Doug Robertson and a special guest, the art teacher, Mel Jacobson.
Oh, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
November 3rd, Jason and I have reserved for emotional political night, the two of us bonding,
Right.
and any brave person who wants to talk to us on election night. On November 17th, we have the Rare Ups, Elise and Eric. And then November 24th, Rick Marker has signed up for the torture.
Yeah.
Right.
And he'll of course bring a special guest.
Yeah. Is he bringing? I was going to say, is he bringing?
He said he'll do it if Boondorf does it. So we have to find Boondorf now. Are you still, you're in touch with that guy, right?
We'll
Yeah,
get him in.
we're all just together at a cabin in Cross Lake, literally like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Mike
Well,
and I.
I'm going to say it over and over like I tell my kids, you can't escape this responsibility. We will have you on the show. You can't avoid us.
That's right.
Well, I guess we can see Rare this way because we don't get to see him in any other way. Whoa!
He's already canceled on us one time, so we're just
Well,
hoping it
shocker.
comes together.
No, but thank you both for doing this. This is
Yeah, thank you. This is fantastic.
a great job and a great. Again, I haven't seen all the clips. I'll make sure I do go back and watch them all. But it's fun to see everyone and see how they're doing and appreciate your leadership here.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, thanks. It's been really fun, and it's helping Marnie and I get through this, I think. Safe
Well,
to
good.
say.
See, we're keeping your skills
Jason.
sharpened.
Well, it's hard. You know, I get to emote once in a while. It is so nice to see both of you. And it's always nice to see Jason. And you were such good friends to me. And you really, like many of the people so far on the show, have been like role models of good male friends. And I'm so grateful, even at the age of 49.
Well, thank
So
you.
from
Thank you,
afar,
Marnie.
Well,
thank
that's
you.
right. Marnie's young.
That's right. She's 1 year.
I'm
Yes, she's not yet
51. I was
50.
like, what is this?
I
40?
have a special Marnie's 50th birthday show in
Yeah.
Oh, that'll.
May.
Oh, and she
Oh,
froze
there
up.
we
And
go.
she froze.
Like, that was awesome.
I'm back.
And she was just keeping us in suspense. Marnie's
We might have to have you guys back because we did the one topic that we did not touch on here at all tonight was Boy Scouts, and there's a lot of
Oh
material
my
there.
God.
Oh, we didn't talk
Maybe
youth
a
and
few-
government. We didn't
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
student
Oh,
government.
youth and government.
youth and government.
There's some
All right.
stories. Steve
Season
Simon had
2.
some good comments on that, I'm sure.
It's good. Yeah.
Yes, season 2.
We'll
Well,
save those for season 2.
Great
Well,
seeing
man.
you both. Thank you so much.
Be safe.
Thanks, guys.
You
See
too.
you
Be
next
safe.
time.
Be safe, everyone. We'll see
Yeah,
you soon.
Take care. Bye.